Hello, my friends, and welcome to St. Michael's Church here on Hamilton Mountain. I am the Reverend John Forbes. Welcome to worship. We begin today with a reading from the book of Isaiah, chapter 6. We begin with the first verse. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lofty, and the hem of his robe filled the temple. Seraphs were in attendance above him. Each had 6 wings. With 2 they covered their faces. With 2 they covered their feet. And with 2 they flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. The pivots on the threshold shook at the voices of those who called, and the house filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me! I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, and yet my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphs flew to me, holding a live coal that had been taken from the altar with a pair of tongs. The seraph touched my mouth with it and said, Now that this has touched your lips, your guilt has departed, and your sin is blotted out. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, Here I am, send me. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Ding dong, the witch is dead. Which old witch? The wicked witch. Yeah, the Munchkins sing it well, better than I do, in The Wizard of Oz. I was enchanted by this movie when I was a kid. From 1939, the best part of this movie for me was when the film shifted from black and white to full color. See, how we see the world around us depends so much on what we pay attention to. What do we see, and what lens do we see it through? Even a slight shift in perspective can change how we see the whole world. Do you know what I mean? As I was reading through the scriptures from Isaiah 6, that moment when the seraph touches Isaiah's lips and he is cleansed, transformed, the vision in my mind changes from black and white to color. And the angels ask aloud, Whom shall I send, and who shall go for us? While Isaiah proclaims, Here am I, send me. Well, this story might sound like lots of other call stories in the Bible. It is, after all, how God works. He identifies someone who is struggling in their identity and turns the world upside down. He invites them on a journey. This journey begins at a particular time and place. King Uzziah is dead. He was a pretty important king of Judah. You can read about him in Chronicles and in Kings. He reigned for over 52 years, which is pretty impressive. He was also struck down by God with leprosy because he tried to burn incense in the place where the high priest was supposed to. He lived another 11 years, but not well. Maybe that's why so many people don't like incense, or why we've never heard of Uzziah since then. Well, regardless, he is dead. The throne is taken over by God, and he's got a pretty big robe. There are angels, 6 wings, calling to each other, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. That's a lot of glory. It's a lot of goodness. This is worth paying attention to because God's glory is so overwhelming that we sometimes can't see it. Oh, it's there, but other things can get in the way. I wonder what gets in your way from seeing God's glory. The voices of the angels are so full of power that everything is shaking. The house is so full of smoke, and Isaiah cries out, Woe to me, for I am lost. I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. yet my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." So Isaiah declares his sinfulness and the sinfulness of us, and yet he has a vision of God, where others have never been allowed to see God. Isaiah does. I wonder, have you ever seen a vision of God? Well, the vision continues, and one of those scary-looking angels called Seraph come flying at him with a burning hot coal from a pair of tongs, and he doesn't duck out of the way. The angels touch his mouth with it and say that his guilt has departed and his sin is blotted out. Well, this is some pretty powerful confession and absolution. It's nothing like we do after the prayers of the people on Sunday, but with the same effect, I think. We are cleansed and ready to see the throne of God. It feels like a good reason to have confession in church. It gets us ready for the big experience. Well, then Isaiah hears the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" Well, Isaiah, whose lips are not burned to a crisp, replies, "Here I am, send me." It's a pretty amazing response to God. No wonder Isaiah is one of our favorite prophets. See, over the last year, I've been focusing on just preaching the gospel each week. It's time, I think, to draw in different stories from the Bible. These are going to help us have our own visions of who God is and how God matters to you and to the world. Visions are what we are supposed to encounter in our lives and in worship. This might be harder to do sitting on your couch than here in the sanctuary, but it is not impossible. There is a grandeur when we encounter God in the Scriptures. It brings about a time where we're awe-inspired into silence and humility that can lead us away from guilt and towards holiness. It is important to take time out to confess to God the things which you've been struggling with, to notice these things that are out of sync. God allows us to step into the light where everything is easier to see, and you notice the things which you can't see in the dark. Now, life is complex, and the emotions are hard. We're constantly being bombarded by messages from everybody, corporations with impersonal agendas. So long as we live on this side of new creation, though, we cannot encounter God without some sense of Isaiah's "woe is me." It comes over us. See, we get it. This is by no means the only feeling that we experience in worship or in life, and it need not even be the one that lingers when we go on with it. But if this feeling of woe is missing completely, then one could legitimately wonder just what God is getting, how we encounter him in worship. The one that Isaiah saw was high and lifted up, or is it the God that we have fashioned for ourselves, low and manageable within the scope of our meager lives on this earth? Well, next week, we'll gather together virtually to worship and check in with each other. We call it Vestry. It's our annual general meeting, our chance to look back at the past year, confess what we've done and not done, and then, of course, to receive God's absolution, to carve a new future, to dream dreams and see visions, to bring those things forward and decide together what we can tackle. I look forward to your vision, with angels or without. Burning hot coals are optional. But when God offers us a vision of the throne, our holiness in our midst, you'd better be ready to say, "Here am I. Send me." Thanks be to God. Amen.